Welcome in, everyone. Today we have Wandering Spirits of the Pacific Northwest, which was founded in October of 2003 by friends James and Martina and is based in Oregon. Wandering Spirits is dedicated to building a positive paranormal community for people from all walks of life to share their experiences with like-minded individuals. They believe in honesty, integrity, and transparency in their investigations and all that they do. A little about each of the members. Martina was a bit of a paranormal child. While other girls played house with their Barbies, hers formed a coven that met in a secret chamber of a haunted mansion. Quote, "If it involves witches, ghosts, and things that go bump in the night, I was there for it and still am." Spirit communication runs in Martina's family. Her grandmother had precognitive dreams and was an intuitive. Martina grew up going to psychic fairs, otherworldly exhibitions, and paranormal conferences with her mother. She has adopted a pagan spiritual path and has come to, quote, "understand that everything is connected. We are constantly getting signs and messages from beyond ordinary reality if we choose to stop, tune in, and listen." She has had some experiences that she, quote, "can't explain by normal, rational means, especially since her mother passed away a few years ago. She believes that the soul lives on after the body, and if that's true, then maybe her mom and all of our deceased loved ones are somewhere out there beyond the veil." And joining with us today, we have James Ramos, who had the feeling that he was not alone, even in empty rooms, since childhood. His first experience was, quote, "while at my grandparents' country home in Montana, I heard voices, not voices that you hear while talking to someone in your presence, but more like voices on the wind. I could not understand particularly what they were saying, but I felt that there were several others in the room with me, although I could not see them." He was raised in a strictly Catholic home and therefore, quote, "determined to make these feelings and experiences go away. I never could, and until recently, I've tried to ignore them and chalk them up to my imagination. But more recent events have turned my attention into fostering and developing the skills I have, tightening my intuition as it may be. He is excited about making community with others who are interested in connecting with their abilities and exploring what's beyond. All right, James, do you want to add anything to your introduction?
No, that's pretty much it. Um, I think my, first experience, I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. I was a child. Like I said, growing up in Montana, my grandparents and parents owned a large beef cattle ranch. My grandparents lived in the original ranch house when I was 6 or 7, it was at least probably 90, 100 years old, the original part of it. So yeah, that was kind of my very first experience with paranormal.
Matt and Chad, how old are the houses that y'all live in? This one was built in the 50s, but have
The
you had
one
any
that we,
experiences?
well, again, I haven't really had too many experiences in this house here. There's some stuff in there, but nothing really to speak of.
Yeah,
But
our house.
the original structure was built in 1894.
Yeah, our
Okay.
house probably, I don't really know, maybe the 70s, if that. So not like super old.
It's not very old. You can tell it's not very old.
Yeah, so like nothing really here except for like every once in a while we think we hear our cat that we had to put down about a year
August
ago,
last
like
year.
his claw marks against the kitchen floor, but otherwise nothing really.
Yeah, I hear him when I'm home alone sometimes. Or at least I think I do.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that
Ghost cats
house.
are very prevalent.
Yeah, yeah, that house. I don't know when it was built. I know my grandparents bought the ranch probably in the 1947, 1948, right around in there. It had always been a cattle ranch. It was owned by the C.M. Russell Cattle Company back in, I think it was started in like 1902, 1903. And the house was there, I think, probably a little bit before that. Um, Huge house. You know, you could be in one end of the house and not hear the people in the next or other end of the house. So it's kind of an L shape. So it was an odd shape to the house anyway. Part of it was two-story, most of it was one story they had built on over the years. Um, but I remember, the voices weren't very clear. Like I said, they were coming over like an old radio sound. Couldn't tell what they were saying. I know that when it happened the first time I was in, well, when it happened both times, I was alone in the house. There wasn't anybody else there, and that was unusual. Usually, my grandmother was there. She didn't work outside the house or anything. It was male voices, two or three male voices, and then the second time it happened, um, my father was in the house and had just left, and my grandmother was outside. Um, and you couldn't, hear anything through the walls or whatever. It was originally a log house with basically some plaster and siding put on it right over the years. Um, and then it was the same thing. I couldn't tell what they were saying, couldn't tell what they were talking about. But that was the two experiences that I had in that house.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. I had a lot of experience like that back when I lived in Gettysburg. We lived right on the battlefield
Oh yeah.
for about 4 years.
Hmm.
And there were more that interacted more directly, but there
Hmm.
was always noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the
Do you know
childhood
anything
house.
in terms of what's that, Chad?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. James, do you know anything in terms of like the history of the land where your grandparents' house is situated?
Yeah, I know it was occupied by Native American way early on. When they would plow the fields and things, you would find, some artifact stuff every now and then. Um, my grandmother's parents, my great grandparents, died probably about a half a mile from the house in a car accident on a country road, and I can't remember the exact reason, but the car flipped over. Her mom was thrown out of the vehicle, um, and they both died in car wrecks. So they were both, within pretty close proximity. Um, Both my grandparents ended up dying in the house
Uh,
later on. So back in like 1992 or 93, I think my grandmother finally passed away at like 95 years old. Um, no cemetery, family cemetery, anything like that around that area. It was in a very small school, or excuse me, a very small community of about 25 people called Springdale, Montana. The railroad used to run through there a lot. I don't know if people were ever killed on the tracks, or I don't know of any train derailments, anything probably like that.
sure.
Um, but the C.M. Russell Cattle Company was a very large operation, and I'm sure people were hurt or killed by machinery or back in the day, 1910s, 1920s. So that's really all I know about it as far as the land. But I do know it was occupied by Native Americans for generations before.
Sure.
Yeah, one of our team members, Carrie, she lived out in Montana for a number of years. So it's like we're gonna try to get out there and investigate at some
Yeah.
point in the future because she knows a lot about the land and history
Yep.
out there. So it'd be nice for
Yep.
to get out there and let her kind of lead something out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot in that state. I can certainly recommend the old prison in Red Lodge.
Uh, that's one of my favorite towns is Red Lodge.
Red Lodge, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I lived for a while in Billings, Montana. There's a really great old tuberculosis cemetery in Billings, right in the middle of town there. I cannot remember how to get to it. I could probably get to it if I was there, but um, people have had a lot of experiences there too. So a lot of places in Montana to check out.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
doing a little research on my lunch breaks at work, and there's
Yeah,
quite a bit of places. I'm like, wow, I never realized there was so
yeah,
much out there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of those early pioneering and you know, a lot of lumber accidents
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
deaths around in that area, around that state. So
Yeah. And Wyoming that had a lot of timber and cattle.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of interesting history for sure in that part of the country.
Mhm.
Trying to think of where I went to high school. I lived in Billings for a little while with my mom's parents in Billings, and I went to Billings Senior High School, and that was built over top of the old Catholic cemetery.
Oh, geez.
Nice.
Uh,
That'd
and
be
they
cool to
had,
see.
yeah, yeah. As far as I know, it's still an operating school. It was pretty old when I went there, but the Catholic Church had come in and built that school in probably 1920, 1923. The lot across the street was empty. I don't know why they didn't build there, but they decided to dig up everybody, move them across the street,
Hmm.
um, and build the high school over top of what was the cemetery. The problem with that is that at the time there were a lot of Chinese graves there that were unmarked, and so I don't know. The rumor, of course, and the legend and the lore is they never got everybody and whatever.
Yeah.
But that was a very creepy high school. I had friends tell me they would see things all the time. People, um, weird noises, or a couple of friends told me they would see somebody, especially in the old auditorium, walking around and uh, things like that. So a lot of stuff in buildings.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, and I always, tried not. Like I said, I was raised very, very strict Catholic. My aunt was a nun from age 15 till she died when she was in her late 60s.
Okay.
So, you're taught. I don't know if any of you guys are Catholic or were brought up
Oh
Catholic,
yeah.
but
Yeah. My step grandma, she used to be a Catholic nun and
oh
Catholic
yeah.
school principal. So I know what it is like.
So anything that didn't come out of the church, it was evil. As far as spirituality or anything like that, it was. So that's the way I grew up, and that's um, why I tried to hide it, so long for years and years. Didn't talk
Mhm.
to anybody about it or anything, and then um, for a while it did, stop. And I'm not a psychic medium, or I don't think I think I'm intuitive, and that's it. I'm not a psychic by any means. Um, but I still every now and then will hear voices or sounds. My house is newer, built in 2003, but again, there's the Native American here in Oregon um, that has that history
Mhm.
to it as well. So yeah,
Now, what tribes would have been out in that area out there?
we still have the. There used to be some Blackfeet out here, not very many. We had the Champoeg tribe. Um, we're close to the. Trying to think of the names now. Um, the Chinook Indians were out
Okay.
here. A lot of Chinook
Yeah.
Indians. Umpqua, the Umpqua tribe, was here. Um, there were, I don't think there were ever any the Crow tribe or anything out here. I think that's more kind of Midwest.
Yeah.
Uh,
Montana. Yeah.
yeah, Blackfeet and Crow a lot in Montana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, one place we have here in Oregon that we've investigated is the Whitman Mission. I don't
Okay.
know if you've ever heard of the Whitman
I haven't.
Massacre. So the story behind that is, back in 1884, 1885, right around in there, missions were coming over to Oregon on the Oregon Trail. And one of the missions that was also a doctor that came over was Marcus Whitman. He came over with his wife, and she was pretty prissy and pretty, uh, like to be in the old money areas and things like that. And he moved her out here. She was not happy about it. So the story goes that she was not very kind to the Indians that lived there at the time. And at the time that Marcus Whitman came, they were going through a smallpox epidemic, and it was killing, Native Americans in droves. They had no immunity to it. So he kind of came with this promise that he was going to come and cure them all, right, and save all of them. Well, that didn't happen. So they revolted and killed him and his wife. His 2-year-old daughter drowned in the creek right there
Oh, geez.
by the missionist. So that has a lot of haunted history to it as well, and that's certainly worth checking out here.
Yeah.
There are a lot of missions and stuff that are known to be pretty active paranormally.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a mission here not too far away from us, from the Sioux tribe.
Oh, okay.
And that's pretty active too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, I live in Salem in the capital. A lot of stuff here. We're actually working on doing ghost tours here around Salem sometime probably later this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're coming this way, Salem is worth stopping in to check out too. A lot of underground, a lot of Chinese, the Shanghai tunnels, things like that, both here and Portland.
Okay.
Have those are pretty active areas. So a lot of stuff in Oregon. We don't have the old history, what I call the old history, the Civil War, things like that. But we do have activity and our own history. So.
Yeah, and a lot of the history out in that part of the country was just brutal history.
Yeah.
With they massacres and murders, and if people had died in the mines and all that kind of stuff. It was just more brutal than a lot of places.
Absolutely. Yeah, they part of the Whitman mission, what happened in the aftermath was the government basically asked for 5 volunteers to be taken to trial. And they were brought from the Whitman mission over to what's called Oregon City, which is about 20 minutes from me, half hour, 20 minutes from me. And they were tried there and hung. And they were hung from the bluffs up in Oregon City along the really high bluffs there as a warning to other Native American tribes that this is what happens if you mess with the settlers and kill people. But they don't know where they were buried, somewhere in Oregon City, somewhere. So yeah, a lot of old vigilante kind of justice.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's crazy. Put them up on the highest point where people can see them from all over.
Yeah. And people say they can see, they'll see lights up there sometimes, or
sure,
figures like that up in that area. So yeah, a lot of shipping, of course, here in Oregon. when Portland was a pretty major port, they would try to come up the Columbia River. That's called the graveyard of ships. Here are a lot of wrecked ships. Another place, if you guys ever come out, this way to Oregon, is the Flavel House Museum. We investigated there, got some really good evidence, some fairly strong EVPs, recorded some footsteps in the upstairs area. That was a house of Captain George Flavel, very wealthy man, very unkind man. Told his daughters the only reason they would ever get married is for money because they were too ugly. So not a real nice guy. But that's a great one to check out too if you guys ever make it up into Astoria, Oregon, on the coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the craziest thing you've ever encountered on an investigation that you can remember?
We haven't come up on anything that I would call, evil or demonic or anything like that. Like that's pretty rare. We've had some good audio EVPs caught. One thing we have here in Oregon is we have a lot of what we're called poor farms. And basically, McMiniman's Edgefield, which is outside Portland, was called the Multnomah County Poor Farm. That started in 1910, 1911. And it was its own farm. I mean, it was its own town, really. And the poor people and the indigent and all of that would come to the poor farm, be put in the poor farm, and they would work. They were required to, plant crops and sustain themselves. They had their own everything, right? We were heading up the stairs. It's a 3-story building, very large building, up to room, kind of infamous room 215. And when the poor farm was eventually abandoned back in the 80s, we have a couple of brothers here in the area known as the McMiniman brothers, and they open up old buildings. They save old buildings, high schools, churches, the poor farm, the asylum they saved, and they turn them into like a resort, so you can stay at these places, and they have all kinds of stuff, soaking pools, and it's a really, really great resort. And they really do a good job of keeping the history of the building alive. So, anyways, we were coming up the stairs by room 215, and there was on the EVP recorder a very audible "Leave me alone," like a yelling. When they had Big Midpoint first bought the Port Farm building, the main building where we heard that room, there was a big pentagram carved into the floor. High school kids and stuff would come over and tear it up. And their solution was to get 5 bagpipers to stand at each point of the pentagram and play Amazing Grace. Now, they thought that would clean the room and clear it out, and so it became the Amazing Grace room, and that's where we heard that at. I think that was probably our most surprising or most shocking piece of evidence. I've been touched on the Flavel house, been touched on the arm by what kind of felt like a child. There were kids that had lived there for a while. Very, very staticky cold, almost like I kind of describe it as putting your arm in static electricity, or like a cheesecloth or spider web feeling in the middle of the room. And it was warm in there, and my only one hand and forearm were significantly colder.
Interesting.
So that for me, yeah, it's a very interesting house, very interesting piece of property.
Yeah, we got our county poor farm in town here where we live, and we went out there last summer, and it's one of the most active spots I've ever been to.
That's my favorite place.
Yeah, that's Natty's favorite spot.
I love that place.
Because we got an old single room school out there in the first jail house that was the county had along with the fur farm. So we got 3 buildings on site.
Yeah.
Yeah, we here in Salem, we also have the old state hospital. Unfortunately, they tore it down and built a new state hospital. Um, but that, was mostly abandoned at one point, and that was um, interesting to be at. We also had what's called Fairview, um, and that was an asylum for children.
Okay.
Back, man, that had to start in probably 1910, 1911, kind of when this whole institutions were being built around Oregon. Held about, I think, 500 children. They had a massive fire in one of the dormitory buildings back in the 20s, killed about 25 children, um, anywhere from infants to, I think, 10 or 12 years old. So that place is private property. At this time, the state sold it to a private investor. But people actually living around that area have reported, hearing children running and screaming, or hearing kids playing like
Yeah.
in their living rooms. So a pretty interesting place.
Yeah, I'm sure they do around there.
Yeah.
You know.
What about you guys? What is your most significant or scary
Well,
thing?
so before we move on to that, the room 215 where the bagpipes were played
Yeah.
to change the energy, I guess, in that room.
Uh-huh.
To give a little background on myself, I'm an Appalachian folkways practitioner and am well studied within the United States, the Appalachian region, the Ozarks folk magic. Well, I guess they wouldn't call it magic necessarily in the Ozarks, but the Ozarks folkways
Sure.
and various other diasporatic, uh, Hispanic, and African and Scots-Irish traditions. B- um, in a lot of those traditions, a way to clear a space of energy or of spirits or of whatever happened there is to make a heck of a lot of noise.
Mm.
To get out the pots and pans and bang on them, or the drums, the bells, whatever you have at your
Yeah.
disposal.
Yeah.
And I can imagine there was quite a ruckus when they were playing Amazing Grace in that room.
Yeah, I can imagine throughout the whole building. Um,
think so.
but yeah, they McMinimans and their locations are closed. Of course, they're older and have been abandoned for a while before they get a hold of them, and they have a lot of kind of encounters that they talk about in their other locations as well. But yeah, I can imagine that being pretty loud, and I certainly wouldn't want to hang around during that necessarily either. So,
I guess the question is, did they come back after all the ruckus?
there are reports still around that room. Um, there are reports of a female spirit that she doesn't like the rooms being left messy. If you leave your clothes around, several guests have reported that come back and the room will just be, their stuff will just be thrown all over, thrown outside the window into the courtyard below. Doesn't happen a lot, but there are, I think, 5 or 6. We talked to the staff when we were there, and there were several reports of that issue happening. And there is a feeling of being watched and not being real comfortable in that room. They usually have 2 staff up in there cleaning in that area at the time on the floor. But the voice that we caught was certainly unhappy, did not want us there. So leave me alone. Didn't want to be bothered.
Mm.
So, and I can imagine, that was a horrible life, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that couldn't have been an easy life.
Mm-hmm. So you asked about our experiences. I guess we'll start with the least psychically adept and go to Matthew for that to start that question off.
All right. So I think for me it was back in Memorial Day. I was at the haunted 1861 Masonic Lodge in Keysburg, Illinois with Gray Duck.
Yeah.
And we were in the like main dining area. And at one table was Grady, I, and his sister sitting there, and Grady was under a very intense acid method. And I don't really know what happened, but like I basically felt like I was in a trance and sleeping the whole time, but knew what was going on the entire time. And then Grady's sister got really sick. And then like he's probably under for like good half an hour, 40 minutes. And like when we stopped, he felt like there was somebody like standing directly behind him the entire time. And it's like, I don't know, I just never felt that way. And it was probably what my only my third ever investigation. It's like where the three of us we had to like go outside for like half hour. We couldn't even be in there. But it
Wow.
was just like I literally felt like I was in a coma. It was so bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about Masonic lodges. I mean, you look at the Masonics, they're very secretive. They're very, we have what a Masonic Lodge um, in Oregon City where they do the Oregon Ghost Conference every year. And they do investigations at night during the conference and whatever. And one of them, uh, last year, they had a group of women up there and men, and the lady had asked, "Are you okay with the women being in here?" And over the EVP, they played it at the conference. It was no, get the hell out.
Hmm.
Very, very gruff, very almost like right in the speaker of the EVP. So I
Yeah.
hear a lot of stories about Masonic lodges.
Well, there was another instance there, like they were all upstairs and I was on the main floor, like kind of in the front entry area. And like, so then you had like the front entry area, then you had the dining area where we were, but then we had a big sitting room. And like, I heard something running, crawling across the floor. And it like legit freaked me out. Like, somebody else came down and they heard it too, but there was like something came up from the basement, was skidding around the floor and went back down. It was like, we never did find out what that was.
Creepy.
Yeah, very creepy. So I'd like to get back there someday
Yeah,
and figure out, what's going on there. Because I think when I was there with Gray Duck, it was probably the only second team to ever investigate there.
wow,
Uh,
nice, nice.
Yeah. One reason Masonic lodges might be so active and other lodges that use the sort of checkered floor.
Mhm.
Now, I haven't read or talked on this for a little while, so don't quote me on it. But the sort of white and black checkered floor, when you think about certain um, folk and even Wiccan traditions, they like to get grounded, say, get their roots down into the earth and sort of pull that energy to themselves.
Right.
And it seems that that black and white checkered floor acts as a sort of analog.
hmm.
So if you're on the third floor of the building where some Masonic lodges are that I'm familiar with,
Mhm.
you have that same sort of connection with the earth and with the universe and energy that way.
Hmm.
That makes sense. Yeah, interesting.
Do you want to share an experience you had?
I did have one in mind. So, at the Redwood Poor Farm, we were talking about earlier, I think it was still daylight out or it was like almost dark. And we were doing, I think me and Chad and Macy were doing flashlights. And no, actually, my dad was there too because he was recording down this hallway. And I walked out of a room and literally saw like a full body shadow walk into a room down the hallway. Like it was literally like it was all black, but it was literally like someone like walked into a room. It
Wow.
was like the creepiest thing ever.
What about the
So,
picture on the wall too?
oh yeah, and then that night, I want to say it was like 10:30. We were all going down to it was because we heard like the REM pod going off or something. I don't
Maybe
remember.
I don't
It was either
remember.
the REM pod or the music box
Music
was going off.
box. Yeah.
Yeah, that was going off. So like we all went down, and then right after we all walked past this one picture, and like we were all past it and like far away from the wall and everything. This picture fell, and wasn't it? It was the guy
It was
from.
a guy in
It
jail.
was the guy from the jail. The
Redwood County's one and only
uh,
hanging.
yeah, which is crazy.
Now,
Yeah.
that would be frightening.
Well, my daughter just happened to be filming down the hallway at that point, and she got it on camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, Redwood was probably the craziest paranormal night I've ever had, besides Jericho.
We just
Wow.
wait until next year. All right, who wants to share next?
Okay. I'll go next. Yeah. And my highlight probably was when we went out to Wisconsin again not too long ago. It was the Trinity Church, and there's a school, yeah, Catholic school, and yeah, parsonage out there. And towards the end of the night, I got picked to do a soul in the school that we had just came out of.
I picked him to do it, guys.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I was like, okay, so I grabbed my stuff and started going back down there. Well, I got down in there, down to the basement where we had been before, and I see this shadow approaching me, and hearing footsteps, and he ran right up to me, like we were nose to nose, and I could tell it. And I was like, no, no, this ain't gonna happen. So I grabbed my stuff and went back upstairs and went outside again. So
Didn't
and
he
it was
follow you up the stairs?
no, not that I could tell, anyways.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, the part that made it even weirder was like a week before that, we had been watching a YouTube thing, and they had got run up on, and I was like, well, that would be kind of interesting. I'd like to experience that.
That's so
So
weird.
there it was.
That's crazy. Also at that schoolhouse, I think it was when Anna was under an Estes and we kept hearing noises in the hall.
Mm,
I swear like I kept like I was standing I don't remember who I was standing next to, but I was standing with my back to the hallway we were in, and there was this window next to our team member Katie. I swear I kept saw something going like past that window, but it was just like a faint mist kind of thing. It was like
yeah.
it only happened a couple of times, so it was weird. So
So how a lot of shadows appear to people is mist or steam or
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So I guess I'll let you choose on two that come to mind for me. Do you want the Bonita Springs, Florida story?
Both of them.
Um,
Do both of them.
which is
You
do
said one or
both
the
of
other.
them.
I said both.
Oh, all right. I suppose I can do both.
Yeah.
So we had we had gone down to Bonita Springs, Florida for a year for my wife's work, and we lived in this house that was about like a mile and a quarter away from the Gulf Coast there. And talking with some of our neighbors, they had said that the property that the house was on was a like a fishing family that was very sort of like Hatfields and McCoys warring with other fishing families and among themselves. And they said actually in that house, a few owners ago, they had pulled a full skeleton out of the attic.
Oof.
And like
Oh,
it wasn't much of an attic, you know, real short roof, not much room to move around in there. So, um, and in that house there were some all right spirits that would come and go. We were right next to the water treatment uh, place was in the woods, gated off behind the house. And so, you know, you think water carries energy, things
Yeah.
come and go that way. But, and I didn't engage with him too much because there was a spirit of a sort of middle-aged to older man there who always smelled like cigarettes and
Mm,
whiskey.
Mm.
And he was incredibly brash. He would rush people, like how Chad got ran up on in the Jericho school. He, we would have guests over because you're down in Florida, people want to go to the beach.
mhm,
And he would, if you're familiar with the term jump,
yeah.
he was, so for those who are listening who might not be familiar with the term, it's not exactly a possession, but you think like possession in the very short term.
Mm.
Like they're not staying stuck in there or trying to move in for a long term. But he would like to jump guests that would come over
Hmm.
and they would get very angry. They, on two occasions, it actually looked like people's faces were changing.
Mm.
Interesting.
Oh, okay.
So it was good to be done with that year in Florida. The house also liked when you would, and I've worked as a professional chef, so I know my way around all the sharp things in a kitchen. And that house loved to have just accidents where you nicked a vein and it
Oh,
like
jeez.
got all over the counter and floor.
Oh no.
Um,
Yeah, how about
I'd
no?
rather deal with Robert.
so
Oh, we're bringing this up again, bro.
my hope when we moved back to Gettysburg was that, all right, that's, you know, that's in the past. That's his
That's
territory. He's
fair.
going to stay there and be his nasty self. That did not happen.
Oh,
He came back with us to our place in Gettysburg.
Uh,
And as I was unpacking, I got that familiar, pungent smell
Hmm.
of cigarettes and whiskey.
isn't that awesome?
And I said, all right, that's enough of that. We're no longer in your home. So I collected the guy and gave him to one of the local covens.
yeah.
Um,
Very
the
interesting.
other the other story in Gettysburg that was less severe was I was doing something up in the attic there, which was much more built out for storage and such. And there was this hammer up there that I guess I just picked up as I was working through and brought it back down into the like main living part of the house. And on the hammer, in a very sort of Harry Potter style, it said property of, and then the rest was scratched out.
Hmm.
Mm.
Oh,
Well, I guess those property rights still held because the spirit that came downstairs with that hammer, we started seeing thick, like gooey black mists
Mm.
around the apartment.
Hmm.
And wherever these mists had like spent most of their day, my wife and I and anybody that came over would just fly up in a fit of rage over nothing.
Hmm.
So I said, "All right, I'm putting the hammer back where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can go get my hammer out of the basement, you know?"
Right.
Enough is enough.
Oh, but like you said, James, in my experience too, encountering demons has been very rare.
Mm.
And the ones that I have encountered, I interview haunted vessels and help them find appropriate homes. And so I've had both angels and demons come through my care. And they're not as bad as the angry spirit of the man in Florida. They sort of have a code. They have a hierarchy. Um, and they're a lot of them I've found to be immediately ready to mess them up. You know, of course, if you're wearing the war uniform of the other side, they're going to go for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but other than that, I haven't. That doesn't mean I don't contain the demons with a spell until they're adopted off and bind them and send them that way. Um, but yeah, I'd say that's way less than 1% of the things I've encountered.
They're, truly demonic or unhappy. Yeah, I think if you're an unhappy person in life, you're probably going to be an unhappy person in death, or whatnot. I worked as a paramedic firefighter for many many years, um, and I can remember going up on arriving at scenes where there had been a death, sometimes a natural, an older person, sometimes horrific car accident, suicide, murder, whatever. Um, and I can tell you one of the experiences I had. Um, there was a you roll up, you come up on a scene like that at night. It's always a little unsettling, anyways, right? You don't really know what you're going to get into, what you're going to find. I had a guy that rolled his the old VW bug buses.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he rolled that like 8 or 9 times. I don't know. He had to be going a good clip. Missed the corner and went off. And him and his wife were in the vehicle. He was deceased when we got there, and she was pretty close to dying. And I, we worked in teams of two on the ambulance, and I was on the ambulance that night. I remember putting her in the back of the ambulance, and we're starting IVs, we're getting the tube down the throat, all this stuff. And she shot up off the stretcher, and she said, "Don't let him come get me. Don't let him come." And I said, what are you talking about?" And she said, that my husband. She said, "Don't let him come in here." I said, "Okay, this is traumatic brain injury or whatever was going on." So we get her to the hospital. She ended up surviving. Went back to the station that night, and my partner, he came, kind of flying out of the ambulance bay, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm not going to go back in there tonight." He goes, "I don't care if we have another call, put us out of service. I'm not going back in there." I said, "Alan, what are you talking about?" And I went in there and looked at the back of the rig, and there was a black hand. We always kept our rigs very clean. Black handprint slid down the back of the rig.
Hmm.
Come to find out, he was unfortunately an alcoholic, had some drug abuse, was very abusive to her. The police had been looking for him for a while for domestic stuff. So that's the closest I've ever come to truly an evil entity. But yeah, I'd feel like that on a few calls. You knew something just wasn't right. You know?
And I guess Chad can speak to this as well because he's done
Yeah.
some paramedic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Have either of you seen the sort of third man phenomenon or the person at the scene who is not related to the deceased, who's just kind of there watching or somehow intervening?
Mm-hmm.
Have y'all experienced any of those cases?
I can't say I have. There was one time where we came up on the scene of a car accident, and there were a couple girls in there, and I could see the one standing beside the car, but it wasn't her; it was the spirit of her. So we figured out shortly thereafter that she was deceased. But that was about the only thing like that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I had one accident involving a couple semis, and I had a guy standing behind me, kind of telling me what to do, and I said, God, oh God, go on, and I wanted to know who it was because they were pretty abrupt and pretty rude, and the officers and everybody else that was there was like, nobody was telling you what to do. There wasn't anybody there doing that, and I thought, okay, again, I'm trying to ignore this stuff, right? This is still back when I'm not going to admit that any of this is going on. I thought, okay, it's my imagination or something like that. But that's the only time I've ever had that where nobody knew what I was talking about.
It's weird.
So, and we do the majority of our investigations actually during the day. We'll do some night stuff, but we do a lot during the day because, our belief, and I know Martina believes this, as well, that if they're there at night, they're there during the day, right?
For
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, it's not 8 o'clock, time to go out and be spooky. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So,
About the only thing with nighttime is it makes the lights of all of our equipment stand out better.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, my dogs.
No, that's all right. Our cat's roaming around down here too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of dog?
2 Great Danes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Oh. And his sister roaming around. When are you guys thinking of going to Montana?
I don't know if we do it. Probably wouldn't be until 2026 because next year we got quite a bit already lined up. It's like we're going a little bit of everywhere next year.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, we're gonna be in South Dakota a couple times, and then Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa. Gonna just got quite a bit lined up. The one I think I'm most looking forward to next year is doing Waverly Hills properly. Natalie and I were there in July for like a junior investigation. There was like 40 some people there, so it's like didn't really get to experience it like it should be experienced.
Yeah. That's a grandfather of them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope to go out and do something with Gray Duck and you guys too. It'd be fun to do something all together.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
For us to go
Is,
up there. So.
is there any really big asylums like in Oregon or Washington?
Um, the biggest ones in Oregon would be the Fairview here in Salem, but again, it's private property. They will not let anybody up there. There is one called Northeastern State up in Washington. It is a very large facility, abandoned for probably since the 70s.
Okay.
We have not been up there yet, but it's on our list to go. Apparently, that is a pretty rocking and rolling place for paranormal. And you can get access to the buildings there. It's actually, they turned it into a park. So, hi. So you can get up there and check that place out too. That's probably one of the biggest.
Okay.
The Multnomah County Poor Farm I talked about, that held about 300 residents, or we used to call them inmates, actually.
Yeah. And they're neat just in the fact that they held so many different things, from the gal being dropped off by her husband to people that were insane.
Yeah. Well, the Oregon Hospital used to be called the Hospital for the Mentally Ill and the Silly.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Right.
Right.
I don't know, it's a horrible treatment, in those old facilities. The other one, the Multnomah County Poor Farm, that went from a poor farm to a nursing home to another child's asylum, and then back to a nursing home before that finally closed. But yeah, they've been through so much stuff.
Yeah.
So,
lots of layers.
Yeah. A lot of layers to dig through and research and try to figure out what's going on. So.
Yeah, it'd be neat to get out in that part of the country.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get out there for sure.
Yeah. Just do it in the spring or summer when it's not, well, it rains in the spring too, but winter's no good.
Well, like my first investigation was last March with Gray Duck at Edinburgh Manor in Iowa, and it was freezing by the end of the night. Like our bones were rattling. That's how cold it was. It was about 2 a.m. We're like, yep, we're done, and we actually drove back from Iowa in the middle of the night.
Oh, geez.
And I was like trying to keep Grady awake the whole time, and his brother's in the back sleeping. It's like, and like the thing is, Grady had to fly out that afternoon for a cruise, so he had to get back and get to the airport by like 2 p.m.
Nope.
So you went north to warm up. That don't sound right.
Right, but Grady is definitely a character. Natty and I can attest to that.
Yeah,
Grady's different.
I've known Grady longer than I've known my wife.
Wow, nice. Yeah, I was in Minnesota one winter. I don't know, probably 10 years ago in Lakeview, Minnesota, for a business trip. Oh my God, I've never been that cold in my life. When I grew up in Montana, we get cold, but not Minnesota cold. I slept.
Minnesota's different in the winter.
Yeah, it's horrible. I slipped on the ice and see a fat guy going sliding down the driveway of the hotel.
When it gets so cold up here, my biggest thing is I hate crunchy snow when you're walking on it. It's just like it's like my nails on a chalkboard. I'm like, why do we live here?
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a saying, because it doesn't snow when it gets to like -20 and on down. So we say at least it's warm enough to snow.
Stop.
And that makes it a little easier to move the snow after it's fallen.
Yeah.
I can't do heat either, so. Oregon's pretty good.
Oh, you liked the heat in Key West, didn't you?
And it's muggy.
Yeah, we were in Key West at the end of June. The last day we were there, the heat index was like 115.
It was so bad. It's like we kept having to buy bottles of water because like after 5 minutes they'd be warm.
Not even that.
It's like it was really bad.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, my only regret from the trip to Key West is because of this one, we never went and saw Robert the Doll.
Hey, you said no too.
I know,
yeah,
but
Robert.
I only
Don't
said no
blame-
because of you. I regret it.
Hey,
So we'll get there. Gotta go
you'll
see
get
him.
there.
Yeah.
You want to go see Annabelle?
We dropped
Who said that? Never said that.
we dropped down to Key West for a few days when we lived in Bonita Springs. And we didn't go see Robert, but we did go to the historic Hemingway house.
Nice.
And there were a lot of people there, but there was one person who didn't look like a living person in period dress or older dress. And then the tour guide, we had a fantastic tour guide. They're somewhat hard to come by in real touristy places.
Yeah.
He talked about this sort of groundskeeper who carved out the limestone underneath the house to make a basement. And then thinking about that later, that guy made perfect sense. You know, you put all that work into something and you care about a property that much, you might stick around.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, the other place, we on our list too is, and it's been hyped up so much. I don't know that we could go there to investigate, but the, Winchester Mystery House down here in San Jose, California.
I want to go there so bad, but that
Yeah.
one.
No, I'm good. It doesn't appeal to me.
I want to go there so.
A lot of
bad.
hype,
That's
so
like,
yeah.
that's on my bucket list.
No, it's all yours.
There's a lot of other places in California too.
Yeah.
Mansion.
Yeah. Lots of stuff out there.
What would your ultimate dream location to go do that you haven't been to?
Boy, I think it would be interesting, to get into, Waverly would be worth going to do. I think.
Really cool.
I'd love to go back to England and just, Gloucester and Scotland and all those old places. We have a friend of ours here in Oregon who's a psychic medium, and he's traveled all over the world. And he said that was one of his favorite places. And I would really like to go back and just, go through the Tower of London, things like that. I think.
They say that's one of the most haunted spots over there.
Yeah. I would love to do that. He went over to Turkey, our friend, and said Turkey is incredibly haunted. I guess, I don't know, we don't think about that being that far away, but he said that has some really, it's very old history again, back to the beginning of modern time,
Yeah, if I had to pick one spot, it would be Dracula's castle.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good too.
That would be my spot.
Yeah, no Vlad.
Yep. What about you, child?
I don't know. That's a tough question.
He's dragging you to the Winchester. Did you forget already?
I'm not dragging her to the Winchester. The skeptic in the house can take you there.
I'm actually sure she does.
Probably.
Probably.
So that'd be yours.
Sure.
Okay.
Ooh, one place I do want to go is that. What's it called? The castle at Project Fear. What was that one called?
Chillingham? Or the first one?
Chelsea's one.
Oh God. What was Chelsea's choice
I
for
remember.
when they were in Europe, Chad? The first
I
location?
can't remember what it was.
That's what she
Well,
said.
yeah,
It,
that's
it
I
was
don't
it
know
was
what it's
a
called.
castle, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a castle.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't remember what that one was.
Yeah,
Chillingham sounds right.
No,
that that
that
was
was
the last one.
yeah, that was the last one.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what
Yeah,
the first one was.
We haven't watched the jail yet. Oh wait, no, we did.
It'll come to us after we're done here.
I'm not gonna look.
What about
no,
you,
that was a
Chad?
neat looking place.
It will work.
What's that?
That was a neat looking place that they
Yeah.
were at.
Yeah.
What about
And
you?
Chillingham looked neat too, but yeah,
What would your location be?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't know. There's just so many places. I
Oxford.
don't know if I could just pick just one. I mean, Waverly would be definitely top. Get top few. Conjuring House would be great.
Conjuring House. I've always want to go there, but that's
Yeah, that one would be kind of tough right now.
Yeah, yeah. Till it gets a
Castle.
new owner.
Oh, Oxford Castle.
Well, you'll have Waverly in about
Oh,
what, 6 months?
Yeah,
Nice.
definitely a bucket list thing.
Hey, stop. Just leave it.
No, it's bothering me.
Here.
Get rid of it.
oh, and so my dream location, and it would take a lot of permissioning and maybe some training if we actually dove on it. Chad knows what I'm talking about. If we could get permission, I would like to at least put a boat over the site of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald
Mm,
and see if we get any activity that way.
Interesting.
Great
yeah.
place.
And if we don't, you get a good boat ride on Lake Gitchaguni.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Uh, um, but it'd
Yeah.
be even cooler to dive on it if that was
Mhm.
possible.
No, we'll have to get on that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I never would have thought of that even, but that would be interesting. Yeah.
What was that? Just heard a phone ringing. I don't know where that was coming from.
Oh.
It must be the TV upstairs or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Mom's watching her documentary thingy.
It's great to see younger involvement. I
Mm.
want to say that it is great to see that. Most people that I know anyway, they want to keep their kids out of it or whatever. Or, we tell our kids, oh no, you're just imagining things, or. So it's great to see. I'm glad you're involved. I think that's
You've
great.
been to what, like now 8 places, 9?
Good.
Count.
Yeah, she's been Indiana State, Ashmore, Waverly, Redwood, and Jericho,
Billy Creek.
Billy Creek.
Billy Creek.
Yeah.
Well, we were only
Well,
there for like
that
10
still
minutes.
counts.
Yeah,
Yeah, my daughter Macy's 15, and she's been along to quite a few places with us.
Good. Good. I think that's great.
yeah. We actually got an investigation on Saturday night down in my hometown of Red Wing. We're doing the Sheldon Theater. To my knowledge, there's only been like 2 people that ever investigate there before, so it's like we're totally going in blind. There's like not really anything haunted history wise that you can find online, so we're just gonna go in blind and see what we get.
See, I actually think it's better going in blind than like knowing like a whole bunch of history, because I feel like if you know a whole bunch of history about like the hauntings and stuff, you focus too much on one thing. And it's like you don't focus enough on all the other spirits. You're just focusing on like the main one that's like most active.
Yep.
So
Yeah, you go in with expectations almost.
yeah.
And it should be kind of fun. My mom's going with on the investigation. She's wanted to do something for a long time, so try to creep her out a little bit.
We'll give her a spare K2 meter.
Yeah,
Walk around.
she watches enough Project Fear. She can
okay.
figure out what she's doing. We'll leave her alone. We'll let her do a solo.
If you want to do a solo, I'll do a solo.
I don't know. Anybody else have any other questions, or I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
No.
Not me. No, I just appreciate you guys having me on. Again, I'm sorry Martina wasn't feeling well. She couldn't be here, but
It's that time of year.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely is.
it's going around, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank
Of
you.
course.
You know, we'll have you guys on for sure. You know,
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
stuff going on. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
before we wrap, would you want to say a little more, particularly about Martina, since she couldn't be here, but about your team, so that people can get excited about it and know where to find you?
yeah, absolutely. So we're pretty new to this, right? We started about a year ago, a little over a year ago. It's Martina and I are investigators and co-founders right now. We haven't added on anybody else yet. You know, you can look at it, check us out on our website, which is wanderingspiritspnw.com. We're on YouTube, Facebook, you know, Spotify, all the places. We just got on Blue Sky. We currently don't do residential investigations yet. A couple of reasons is we want to get more experience under our belt before we go into someone's home. And secondly, it's a safety issue. There's only two of us, and people are kind, you know. So, but we do, you know, primarily public spaces, things like that. So yeah, you can check us out. You know, YouTube. Send us you sign up for our newsletter, the website. So, and we're here in Oregon. So.
All right. What's that on Spotify?
Yep.
Yeah, Natalie just found you guys on Spotify.
Oh, good.
So she's already jumping the gun. She's getting things going.
We're getting better as we go along.
Yeah. We've only been a team officially for like a month.
Yeah.
So we're like, we only have, as a team, we only have one investigation under our belt. So yeah, we're just getting started. So next year's gonna be huge.
It's just don't be
Yeah.
epic.
Yeah.
So definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah. Cool. Good deal.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's all I have. I don't know if the other two have anything.
No, that's it. You know, I was my biggest thing was to see what there was out in that part of the country.
Yeah, I'll definitely start putting on my list of places to plan for the next couple of years after 2025 and
Yeah.
put some more mileage on.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you guys have questions, you know, just let me know.
All right.
Happy to help out. So.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, guys.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, you too. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
This has been Nightmare: Stories of the Other Side, a production of Nightmare Explorers.